Righty. Welcome everybody to the first day of S&A deliberations. Today is March 7th, and I will start today's deliberation meeting at 10:10. Alrighty. There is no agenda for today, but we will be here just going over all our base funding requests and doing our best to make decisions that are best for the campus. Righty, Robbie, go ahead.
Okay, cue the fun stuff. So I thought we would start this morning, y'all, with a few just reminders before we start deliberations. The first one is let's talk about process. So ideally, after today and potentially tomorrow, we will write up what we call our draft recommendations. So after you all discuss and make a vote on an allocation, so I want to give campus activities the amount they're asking for. I will write it up in a format as like a memo, and I will send it out ideally tomorrow evening so that it's in people's inboxes first thing on Monday. That basically says S&A's had their deliberations. Here's what our recommendations are. We have what we call a cooling off week. So everybody gets 1 week or 5 days to respond to S&A's recommendations. And then you didn't understand what we were doing. I want to provide additional context. You misunderstood what our programming does. We don't agree. All things that are fine to say. And then next Friday, when we come together on the 13th, we will hear that feedback, either written, verbal, whatever. And then you all will decide whether you're going to make an adjustment to your recommendations or whether you still, as a committee, agree that you made the right decision. And then those recommendations will be sent on to Alex will take them to ASCW's public meeting that following week, and they will go up to Vero and Joel. Now, remember that we are a recommending body. So while we send them to student government, if student government says, I don't agree, that's okay. If usually Joel and Vero don't say they agree or disagree because they oversee the committee, right? But eventually then it goes to the Board of Trustees in May. So the Board of Trustees is the one that says, we agree, S&A did we agree with what S&A's recommendations are. The budget is final for the next 3 years. Or if they did perhaps maybe what came out last year, we want to do a 1-year budget cycle and ask everybody to refund for the following years. Hopefully that doesn't happen so that we don't have to do base funding 3 years in a row. But again, that is a possibility. Okay. Any questions on the process from here on out? Okay, great. So then let's jump over to during our training, we talked about a few things. The S&A policy that governs how we distribute money, how people use their base funding requests, and also what's called the Killian guidelines. Now, our policy is specific to CWU, but the Killian guidelines are used across the country for student activities funds. Like this was created to help guide committees like yourselves on the proper use of S&A funds. So remember S&A student activities. You all pay it. Every student pays it. It goes into a pot and we distribute funds to areas that we believe are going to support students. That's the number one rule. We're supporting students. Okay, so let's talk about funding priorities. So this is number 3 here. So Aaron's going to jump into this after I'm done, but there are a few areas on your guys' budget spreadsheet that we cannot cut. For instance, the bond payment. We have to make our mortgage payment. We can't say, sorry, mortgage company, we're only going to pay you this much this year. It's we signed, well, you didn't. The state signed the contract 20 some odd years ago, and we have to fulfill that contract. So there are a few budget areas on that budget sheet that we cannot reduce their funding on. So Aaron will kind of guide us through that. The second one is funding priorities. So there are priorities to be considered when we're funding pre-existing contractual obligations. And I'm trying to think of an example of that. And I'm drawing a blank of a contractual obligation we currently have. The bond payment. Okay, there we go. A contractual obligation. We've signed the mortgage and it's there. So that's one. Or the admin fee. Thank you. The admin fee that we pay. That cannot be cut. The other one is any debts incurred. I don't believe we currently have any debts incurred. That's why we have that reserve account so that if we need to pay for something like the circ lighting project or the carpet ECLC project you all will vote on, those things come out of the reserve. Any legal obligations, that's probably, again, is probably more like the bond payment. It's legally obligated to pay that. Contracted agreements recognized and approved by the committee. I don't believe we have any of those recognized by the committee. Um, the biggest ones are the student union and recreation center support costs. So think about the circ custodial, recreation, circ accounting. Those are all areas that have to be funded because they run the building, right? They clean the building, they staff the building, they provide accounting services to the building, the rec center. Yes, sir. Probably just so transcription can pick it up. Thank you, Bob.
When you say recreation, do you mean rec admin?
Yes.
I, I'm just starring these.
Yep. Yeah. No, thank you. And then lastly is the stability of programs affecting students. Now, this one personally is a little gray. So you have to think about what programs are we funding that would affect students? And if you don't fund those programs, what is the ramifications of that for student population? Okay. So number 3. So going back to admin fee, circ accounting, rec, student union operations / custodial, bond payment, and in the student funds financial manager. So those are the areas that we have to fund based on our funding priorities because those were required contractual obligations of creating this building in 2006, almost, 20 years ago next month, if I remember correctly. So those are areas that we can't really say we're not paying those or we're not going to fund those. Okay. And then the last one being stability for programs affecting students. So those are our funding priorities today, as you guys are all considering. Okay. The last thing I want to share, and again, I don't think we need to run through this, but I just like to make sure, yes, it does say 2010 because that was the last time the Killian guidelines were updated. But again, this is something that kind of governs how the S&A funding policy should be used. So there are a lot of things that we can come back to this as often as you like. They give examples of impermissible use. You can't give gifts. You can't take S&A money and buy everybody an iPad. That would be an impermissible use of it. I know people are devastated when I tell them that. You guys can't fund orientation. That is considered a recruitment event. So S&A fees are not allowed to recruit students to CWU. That's the recruiting money, right? There's a big difference between supporting, because they're not students, right? So orientation students aren't enrolled. They're not currently students, so they're not paying the fee. So the S&A fee goes to support current students paying the fee. You can't give away things with it. So let's just go over a few examples of permissible use. So the first one is traditional and time-honored activities such as student government, clubs, programming organizations, events, it says forensic presentations, student publications, and other mass media initiatives. So that's one of them. You can use it to pay for travel and meals during a group travel. Again, why we fund club travel. You can buy trophies, certificates, plaques, and things like that for students who participate in things. So you're getting something out of it, right? You're not just saying everybody gets a car today, but because you participate in this, you get a gift. So you are allowed to do rewards for participation. Support for college employees at student-operated programs. That's a big one I know you all really value. Liability insurance. So when student government and SLICE talked about club travel insurance, that's something that can be paid for by S&A. Meals and refreshments with approved programming, costs of child care centers for children of students, institutional memberships, and special tutorial or co-curricular programming provided that it's not critical to the operation of the college. So that's one that will come up, I think, a few times as we discuss some of our deliberations today. Okay, so again, we can go through some of these. You can buy furniture, you can partially subsidize a student food bank, those types of things. So there are quite a few things in the Killian guidelines that do guide how the money can be used. Okay, by no means do you need to remember this. If you all go off on a tangent where everybody's getting a car today, I'm going to bring you back, as devastating as that sounds. But so I just wanted to touch on those two things before we began. And then I think I'll let Aaron run through the budget sheet you all have so you kind of know what we're looking at. And then I know not everybody was here in person yesterday, but we're also going to go over your 2 funding options that might be the basis of where we start our conversation today, because we need to decide if we're based on So that budget spreadsheet you all have in front of you at the bottom has 2 boxes. I could pull it up here too, I forgot. Okay, so those 2 boxes show you what, as the advisors, financial advisors really, what our recommendation is for you to consider. So currently the rate is $282.98 for a student per quarter for an S&A fee. Right now, based on, if you look at that first box, there were $6.1 million in requests for S&A fees. We only anticipate to have $5.6 million in S&A fees, which means you'd have to cut 500. Oh, okay, that's okay. Oh, okay, okay. No worries. So this box right here shows that if you all decide to keep the S&A fee as it exists today, that you will have to cut $450,000 from the requests we have in front of you. Yes. Yes. So the ECLC flooring, if you all remember, they came for supplemental. We suggested they come back and ask for a one-time base funding adjustment. So for the first year of their request, they will get $53,000 more than they will the remaining years to cover that carpet project. And that $53,000 isn't going to come out of what you are cutting. It's going to come out of reserves. So keep that in mind. That's why Aaron has the number laid out like it is because that 53,000 exists out there and we need to make a decision on it, but it doesn't hurt what you have to allocate because it'll come from the reserve pot. Okay. The second box over here is if you all chose to do a 4% increase on the S&A fee, which would start fall 26, again, requests are the same, that 6.1. We only this anticipated revenue goes up a little bit because of course you're increasing the fee, which means you'd only have to cut 248,000 out of the requests you see in front of you. Yeah. So thank you for that. So let's go down that road. So let's say you make the recommendation today that we are going to increase the fee by 4%. That has a process approval as well. You all just don't get to make the decision to increase it. You would vote on the fee increase. Alex would take it to student government. Student government would support it or not support it. Correct. In the meantime, the recommendations are moving on. So the recommendations are going to be based on whatever box you choose. I know it gets kind of complicated. So if you choose to up the fee and it goes to student government and then goes to UPAC and then goes to BOT and they say, no, we are not going to let you increase that fee. Guess what we get to do spring quarter? We get to come back and we have to go back to box 1. Now, I will say a couple things as you all think about this conversation. We did increase the fee increase last year. We did do that in order to help some of the funding allocations. Yeah. There wasn't any pushback at all, to be honest. And in full transparency, it is pretty common, as many of you know who've been here, tuition usually goes up on a yearly scale. Housing and dining fees are adjusted on a yearly scale, tuition and fees, and we just happen to be in the tuition and fees. So yeah. And so there's so many moving pieces with this, but the fee increase for next year will have to come. Otherwise, what happens is every year their budget gets smaller because the cost. Oh, yep. Correct. Yep. And this is also to consider, y'all, this is an estimate. This is Aaron and Trent's best estimate based on enrollment, because of course, the more students are enrolled, the more S&A fees we get. The less students that are enrolled, the less S&A fees we get. So it is the best projected enrollment number we can provide, and that number won't be solidified until late spring for spring. And then of course, till next year, right? When we census basically, yep. 10th day of fall quarter, we'll know how many students we have for fall. So I know that was a lot of information. Yeah, go ahead, Abby. Okay, so what kind of question? Go ahead. Yeah, so you guys would vote on it, and then it would go, you would take it to student government, and student government would put it out at a public meeting for feedback. And then student government can choose to support it or not. It's best to get student government's approval. It doesn't mean we have to have it, because again, we're just trying the student body, I'm sorry, the student government is supposed to be a representation of the student body. So we can't ask all 8,100 students what they think about a fee increase. So in turn, we go to the representatives that act on behalf of the student body. And then it goes to UPAC just as an informational. And then it goes to Board of Trustees in the middle of May for a PBAC. I'm sorry. I used the wrong acronym. Sorry. President's Budgetary Advisory Council, and then goes to the Board of Trustees in May. Do you want to add something, Trent? Correct. Housing fee. I also want to be transparent because the Board of Trustees meeting that just took place. The student union fee and the rec fee are also asking to be increased this year, and they haven't been increased in quite a few years. I'm sorry. Yeah, it had been quite a few years. I know housing was approved for a 2.3% increase in housing and dining fees for next year. Sorry, thank you. 2.75. I was just going off of memory and that wasn't good. 2.75. So again, the point being that things are costing more money, and I think you all know that just in your regular lives. So I'm not saying that means you vote for it or vote against it, just to be transparent. And then also, I believe, as part of the student government elections, there will be a vote on it's called a CAP, which is course material action. So the bookstore is going to ask the students to vote on a fee. So instead of just go ahead.
Pooling all their, oh, yeah, no problem. The CAP program is being spearheaded by the Cirque bookstore primarily, and in tandem with the library and Everett and a few other people. Basically, they're proposing a new fee that would make all books come out of a singular pot from that fee. It would also include a majority of art supplies, where it would essentially nullify book fees for upcoming freshmen, and it has a compounding effect every year, so that if so and so people pay this fee, then so and so people get this amount of books. I'm explaining it wrong, but basically, it gets better every year. Yeah, I'm close. Yeah. Um, It includes inclusive access. Yes. It is not just physical. Yeah, basically.
Sorry. Yeah, so kind of like Alex was saying, that's essentially how it works. The thought being, right, is some classes, like let's say paramedicine, those textbooks can be $800, right? And that can prevent certain people from choosing those classes. So instead, it's equalizing the fee across all classes so that you get the materials you need for every class at one price.
It is also, I've been part of the team that's been like making the structure for it in student government in association with the Circle Library. They're also making it incredibly easy to opt out of, like very apparent right on the page. If students do not feel like they will benefit from it, then it'll be incredibly clear. You do not need to do this. This is like a fee that you are able to opt out of. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like the other fees where it's non-mandatory. So you could still do inclusive access. You could still just go purchase your textbooks from the bookstore if you want to. So there's little options there.
Yeah. They're making it pretty easy to opt out. Yeah. If you decide you only need one book and it's $50, you may want to opt out of the 200 and buy your book on your own. So course affordability program. That's what it is. CAP. Okay. Okay. Any questions before we kind of dive in? Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
So, is this the point where we would start making our, okay, I'll wait.
Yep.
I have one question for the committee before we begin. Based on all the information heard, are we wanting to go forward with the mindset of the 4% increase, or we wanted to go in the mindset of the current rate? Because that will decide the okay. I will go around the table to get all input.
Correct.
No. What's yeah. There's just a discussion right now.
And
Abby?
I will add this vote to next week's meeting.
Yeah.
To discuss and actually make an official recommended vote. Thank you.
Abby?
Other than the possibility of us having to redo the whole thing in spring, are there any other consequences if we were to proceed with the 4%? Like, for example, could we be giving clubs like false hope that they would receive their funding and then, or like
Potentially, it would be a situation where if we go forward with the 4% and we share that out as the recommendation from the S&A committee, then that is our recommendation, and we will be going forward assuming that it will be passed. But at any level of PBAC or the Board of Trustees or difficulties with student government, there might be things that stop it, and we have to redeliberate in spring with that in mind. Mm-hmm.
Very strong experience on this committee. And so I think that if it's getting through the students and the students are aligned with a decision, then the rest of the process is really going to be looking at it like, why should what can we afford it? Are we giving away free cards? Like, you all do have a strong voice on this, and it could be turned down, like that is the possibility. But if you go with the other option, then there is no chance of having additional funding.
Rachel?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, I am of the mindset that I'd like to cut the least amount of money as possible. And even if it means having to increase the fee by 4%, it's for the students, which is what is why I'm going for it, I guess. It's the students paying for their ability to have the best student experience that they can through our fees.
Makes Eros? No worries. Austin?
Kind of just agreeing with like what Rachel was saying, that it's if all other fees and like all other fees everything's increasing, why wouldn't this also increase? And like we're trying to like help support the students best we can. So yeah.
It's a sad reality what's happening with the US dollar right now, but it sounds like this is really hinging on our ability to pitch why we would do this to the students. And I think if just putting it into the math makes it sound real simple. It's an $11.32 change per student. That's very unlikely to bankrupt any individual student. It's less than the minimum wage for an hour's worth of work, and that's a one time in the year payment. Oh, my bad. That's a three. Okay, so that's
33.
what, 4 hours of work a year?
Yeah.
Or 3 hours of work a year? That's not that bad, right? But what it does is it saves us $200,000 plus a little bit to put towards the various requests that we received this year. It feels like a really straightforward kind of choice. I'm all for it.
Arrows.
Okay, Aaron, I'm trying to clarify in my brain, but if we increase this, then we'll get more like departments coming for supplemental. Is that if we increase it, it kind of sounds like we're gonna have more like departments and stuff coming for supplemental.
Base funding and your supplemental funding. So this is recommending
Just confused.
base funding.
Okay.
And I could add to, I think it'd almost be the opposite. If we wouldn't increase, you would actually have more people next year coming for supplemental because they would have to fill their budgets because you would be cutting more from them in this current year.
Okay.
Yeah, so kind of keep in mind that this is gonna be what they get for the next 3 years. And absolutely, if as we saw this year with areas that are funded less, then it brings us to the table more. And without, I'm not trying to push efficiency, but without doing a fee increase, you're gonna have less money to have to help those areas that are underfunded. I'm just gonna
I understand
put one thing out there that the S&A fee is capped by the Washington state law at 4%. And so, you can't do a makeup if all of a sudden, kind of thing. So it is reasonable also to think of keeping up with inflation because you can't ever, you can't go flat and then do like what like student union or the rec center can do.
Right. Okay. I was just a little confused. That's all.
Make sure that everybody, there's no bad question or anything, and it is critical that you all feel like you have every bit of information that you need. So if we have to be here all weekend next weekend, then so
Based off that, I do think the fee is a good idea, especially if cutting stuff or doing what we have would probably affect departments and students. So good.
One last comment on this. In case there's this is just an attempt to allay any doubt left in people's hearts. It sounds like we're pretty much in agreement about this, but last year, a lot of people were really upset because almost all of these requesting areas took huge hits. And increasing this fee would allow us to fund as many of the requests as possible this year in order of funding priorities. And I just think that would not only does that mean fewer people freaking out next year and coming back to the table, but it'll feel like we have done something to make up for the pain that people felt at the end of last year.
Also, I think it just comes down to being fully transparent on why we're increasing the fee. When we go to ASU, like making sure that everyone clearly understands that it's to put more money in our pot to give back to the student body. As long as we communicate that, I don't see a big issue with increasing the fee.
On the student government angle, I definitely think there is a case to be made, especially with the just the cost benefit value of this fee increase of $33 a year, saving, what was it, $200,000 for S&A things. However, as the chairman of the committee, my only concern is that in the very hypothetical situation where this is not passed or the fee is not passed, my priority is to make sure that the members of this committee are not inflicted with any significant backlash because we are forced to go back into deliberation in spring. That is my only concern as the chairman. It is that if we go forward with the $200,000 and some change deliberation, and we put that out into the committee or out into the community of CWU, and whoever, whether that's PBAC or the BOT, says no, my only concern is that that will significantly impact the members of this committee who are forced, or people who maybe do not understand that we are not going back into the redeliberation because we want to. And that is something that I think needs to be effectively communicated to as many base funded areas as possible, that this is something that has come above us. We are a recommending body, and our recommendation was not put forward.
Would it be appropriate for these requesting areas to get in the information that if the fee increase that we're recommending gets denied, we will have to redeliberate, and maybe give them the numbers that we're working with here?
Yes. I also want to say that I believe in my experience here on campus that the Board of Trustees has always taken our recommendations as student input, right? You all are the recommending body for this committee. Of course, anything can happen, but I do want to say that the Board of Trustees does put value in your all's time and recommendation. So for them to come back and say, no, we're not going to let you do the fee, I think is highly unlikely. That is my personal opinion and experience here on this campus. But to Alex's point, anything's possible. So it is possible that we would have to come back. But yes, Bob, I would make sure that in my email, I've already gotten it written out thanks to ChatGPT. And I can add that in that, we decided on the fee, and in turn, because of the fee, we only had to cut 248. Pending the fee isn't approved. It would mean we would have to go back and cut 450. I think that's fair to be transparent.
Yeah, and I just to add Robbie's, I think so too. I think especially this fee over some of the other fees that are being proposed, this one holds more weight and is more likely to go forward. And just looking back at the housing and dining rate, right? Housing and dining did a rate increase for the same exact reason, right? They have $14 million in payroll. It's going to go up 2 to 3% next year. They have to raise their rates just to pay that cost. And that's really what you all are in the same thing too, right? This is a lot of payroll costs, and each year it's going to go up a couple percentage points. And just like Aaron said, you don't want to fall behind because you all cannot do a catch up year, unlike housing and dining.
My last bit of this conversation, because we do need to move on into actual deliberations. Robbie, if it is okay, if I could maybe give the chair input on the email itself to see if I can get some wording for the committee itself in there, just read it first, see if there's anything that needs to be tweaked. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, no.
Yes, you all would be included in the email
Yeah.
I sent, because of course I'm writing an email that's based on a decision you all make, because I don't get to make the decision. I'm just here as your lovely advisor slash email writer.
Yeah.
We believe in his words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't believe in.
Yeah. No, yeah. Alrighty. Well, with that in mind, I would say, as the official opinion of the committee, that we will be going forward with the 4% increase as our target goal to cut. Alrighty. Time to do math.
Uh, I was thinking it would be efficient for us to pull up that slide on our funding priorities again and kind of just go in that order.
I apologize. You guys are going to hear me talk a lot more than I usually do.
in our experience.
Correct. Yeah, and just to do the total, that's $2.27 million, so about 39% of the pot. $2,272,092.74.
So I'm gonna make I'm gonna make a request to the committee as I'm looking through this. So one of the biggest issues that happened last year was that there was a lot of hard decisions that had to be made, but a lot of areas were completely defunded or just not given any further funding from the S&A pot. Looking at this, there are some areas that, while maybe not giving us the most revenue back into the S&A pot, personally, I do not feel comfortable with cutting simply due to how small of a request they have. Um, those being English Monastash, KCW, WSRN, and the Community Garden. That would be the requests of 7,200. Yeah. My metric that I'm kind of going by is that anything below 10,000, personally, this is just my opinion as the chair and as the ASU representative. Personally, I don't feel comfortable with cutting them simply because of how small of a request they have. This can be obviously disagreed with, and I'm happy to hear any dissenting opinions.
If I may, I understand it's a small amount, but it does add up in the long run. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think was the community garden the CWU farm?
No,
Okay, no, never mind.
two separate things.
Please ignore everything that I said. I agree with you.
I'm willing to hear you out, but honestly, the thing that I'm focused most on is them 6 numbers right there in order. So if y'all can help me understand which one of those categories these things fall into.
The ones that are included, oh, I can't walk with this one. I think that the ones that are included here sort of take 1 through 5 over here. So now I think we're all
on 6.
I think we're all in 6.
Good.
Yep. All right, let's discuss.
All right. Yeah. So looking at this, if we are doing the 4% increase, I was going into this with the mindset that we'd be cutting off $500,000. If that is not something that we are doing and we are actively increasing the fee, I do not believe a full defunding of any area is necessary. If we were still at the previous deliberation amount, I would have been a little bit more understanding at some areas not getting S&A funding. However, if we are getting rid of the $300,000 that we need to cut, roughly, well, $250, but I personally do not believe it is necessary to cut things below $10,000.
So just for clarity, we don't have to approve or disapprove of these. We can fund them at a specific percentage and then let them figure out what they're going to do with that. All right, I hear you. I hear your argument.
That is another point to be made for those 3 below 10,000 in particular. Many of them, Community Garden is requesting the exact same that they requested in 26. English Mass Dash, the exact same they requested in 26. KCW is requesting the exact same they requested in 26. Looking at the numbers that they were given, it was likely that they were.
I'll say it over, but ECW has came for a supplemental, and I'm surprised they're not asking for a little bit more because they're having a hard time maintaining all their stuff.
WSRN, that's
Okay.
sports.
I thought they were.
They're both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but still, they're pretty much working on the same like trying to get it to function type budget, right? I don't know. I wasn't there for that one. I only looked over it. It was so confusing.
For WSR in particular, that was for 2 student positions, I believe.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
They go to the game, they call the plays.
Oh.
And the station is downstairs doing the radio.
And they did request more radio station.
Okay.
Yes, the radio station did request more.
I think it's just because my vision is a little blurry this morning. So thank you.
So now that we've taken care of most of our funding obligations, and we're down in number 6 for all of these, are we just going to work up by cost?
I would say it's not the worst idea to go. We could go. I wanted to start off with the lowest as just a general, like, I don't think we should go below this. We could go from bottom to top or top to bottom, whatever the committee is feeling.
All right. Oh, well, I'm inclined to agree with you on these 3.
Just putting it out there. I want to make sure that everybody realizes that as you're thinking about these, are you thinking about funding priorities, but you're also thinking about how many students are these programs serving?
Yeah. Yeah, the reason why I was thinking about it that way is I noticed that the most expensive ones have a lot of staff salaries.
I actually have a question about that since S&A dollars are from the students and they're supposed to be used purely for the students. Are we able to justify that those dollars should be used to pay staff salaries instead of potentially creating student jobs or something?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, Abby. So the answer is that you all, I mean, the harsh reality of it is no offense, but students can't run the circ. Students aren't available to throw events all the time. Students don't know liability contracts. Students can't supervise students. So part of the funding when this building was created is that we knew we had to have full-time staff to run these student-focused programs. So for instance, Slice has to have full-time people there in order to plan these events or plan the leadership conference. So while maybe not on the top 6 of a funding priority, you can't do it without full-time staff. The other thing is if you cut their funding, we don't tell them where the funding comes from. And we are contractually obligated to these full-time people because they were hired by the state of Washington, et cetera, et cetera. So if you say, Slice, we're not funding you all the money you want, as most of them, when asked if they didn't get funded, unfortunately, their funding comes out of programming or student wages. Because you can't just say, sorry, Abby, we didn't receive any funding. You don't have a job anymore. Does that make sense?
Then could I, very loose idea, but could I make a suggestion that for departments that do require staff salaries or benefits to come from S&A, could we just, for reference, minus not okay, wait, just just hear me out. We minus it from the total amount that they're asking so that we what do you call that? Fully consider like how much would the program in itself, like the actual program be affected? Because should we like hypothetically not fund it or not fund it fully? Do you know what I mean? It's like because they're gonna have to pay this anyways. Like the department will have to pay it anyways. So if we choose to cut it, then we're cutting the actual program and it might hurt them a lot more. So that do you guys get what I'm saying? I'm sorry, my brain.
I do understand what you're saying. And you all you could say, well, okay, we want to fund all of the, staff wages. Or you could look at here and say, you know, look at the areas that have staff salaries, but I do understand what you're saying.
Okay, because my fear is like, let's say a department asks for like, let's say 500, but 400 of those go to staff salaries. If we didn't look at the staff salaries and we only funded 400, then the whole department wouldn't be able to operate. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is just for clarity is, for example, this ECLC, 1.2 million, 730,000 is staff salary or benefits. What we are actually voting on, because that has to be paid. Let's say we minus that we lessen their allocation by 10%. That would actually come out of the that would only affect the roughly 500,000 remaining between student wages and goods and services.
That's exactly what I was saying.
I'm gonna be totally honest, I'm still kind of confused.
And so I think you could get an approximation by taking total revenues minus staff salaries, but it's not taking into account salary savings, things like that. So it'll get you close, and could be a guide.
So I want to hear y'all's opinions on this. Do y'all think it would be a good idea to go ahead and subtract the staff salaries and benefits from the current amount that we're working with? And then so that we can just focus on the other numbers when we're doing our deliberations.
I think they also make revenue.
Or lower, right? So the other thought you might think about it is if you guys look at this holistically and didn't break out the staff wages, there are also other areas that do generate revenue.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying they should be punished for generating revenue, but remember that there are areas that may have higher revenue this year, may have lower revenue, and that revenue is there to help offset costs.
Remember, the revenue target on your sheet is what they noted that
They were going to bring in.
would bring in. And you can then cross-reference.
I'm asking another clarifying question. So the other funding, is that part of their total revenue? All right.
Their self as well as like in the department notes that they also had other revenue like course fees and stuff.
Okay.
Everything fine.
Correct.
So the fiscal year 27 that's what we're working with. Total revenue is their other funding added to that. All right.
But the revenue is an approximation, right? Because there's no way they'll make the same revenue every single year.
You all have made a generalization or generic comment that funding the first four, so Monash Tash, WSRN, Community Garden, and Lions Rock based on the fact that they are $10,000 or less. So you don't want to touch those at the moment.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
Okay, so then let's move on down to the next one, which is the museum, which we heard yesterday. And if you don't want to talk about it, we can move on. Like, somebody just give me a little bit of direction on where you'd like to go with it.
Yeah, can we put it on a pin?
Put a pin in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, number one would be the MCC/DEC. Yep. No, highest would be MCC/DEC with their 476,540.
Also, the more we decide
Yes.
today, the less we have to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I think sorting it by size was a good idea, but it feels like the bigger choices have a larger effect, and we might need to deliberate on those a little harder before we get to the smaller ones.
Because if we do all of the small ones first, we're gonna run out of money pretty fast. Whereas if we get the big ones done first, it's like
Save money on the small ones.
We're starting with the Multicultural Center?
Yeah, the MCC.
Awesome.
And just a suggestion, do you all, so lunch is supposed to be here a little closer to noon. What we could do is we could just do, I hate to say this, like speed round, like let's go down the list, starting with MCC, give you guys 5 minutes to discuss. Doesn't mean we're not making a recommendation on it. Just get everybody's thoughts out there, see what everybody's thinking about, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have the breakdown of the MCC here. It's looking like I'm looking right now at their goods and services and their student salaries. Salary and wages, I know the committee is very intent on not touching that. Looking at it, it seems this is 2025. Where's their
More. That's one.
alrighty? They have $3,000 for goods and services, or 30,000, apologies. Looking at their breakdown from previous years, it does. They had 60,000 historically. They went down to 30,000. I'd imagine I have no way of telling where they took that hit.
So Mal actually, that was a question from the committee yesterday,
Okay.
and Mal actually said that they cut their goods and services by half because they started collaborating to help offset the costs. So instead of the MCC taking all the costs, they try to get dining to take some, or the circ to take some, or whoever they're collaborating with. So they were able to reduce their goods and services.
Then they
Okay.
expanded.
Yeah.
And then they expanded their student wages and hours because clearly they have a new building and a new facility to staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the MCC that we feel there's anything worthwhile to discuss at this moment in time? Okay.
I want to fund them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just clarifying, these funds also include all of is it the ESC clubs or is that a separate thing?
Separate.
Okay, cool. Then no, I don't really have anything for that.
Awesome.
I just want to say, any of these things that any of these organizations that we look at,
Mhm.
and like through here, I put an arrow next to whether they decreased or increased their funding because I'm like, I see a decrease. I'm like, they're trying, and I like that.
Okay.
And this is one of those examples.
But they came and asked for a higher amount last year, and the committee did not fund that because they hadn't actually completed the MCC yet, so they didn't have an idea of what their building hours were going to be or anything. And so I think that this reflects that additional cost related to their new space.
So what I'm hearing is the MCC got bigger, lost somebody, increased what they do for students, and are requesting less.
But not as much as they were initially.
Yeah, requesting less than they did last time. Oh, okay.
So
My vote is to fund this one.
Okay. So we will take that official opinion. Everybody should write it down. Okay. Okay. Cool.
And I'm keeping track of it. You could actually move it to the current recommendations tab if you wanted, but that's the one I.
Oh, sure.
Or you can go back down to their, to what they have left. I'm not sure what's gonna be best for looking, but that's where I'm doing my numbering.
that one's probably better. Okay. Yeah.
So this one is strictly building operations and student employment, correct?
It seems
And
like
also
they've-
staff.
It seems like staff, student employment, and building operations is what this
Okay.
primarily is.
Yeah.
Staff to be students.
But they did lose one staff member, did they not?
They have a part-time OA3, which they would like to make full-time again, but that was something that they came into the position or
Yeah. Be a cycle.
correct. Yep. So if I did my math correctly, they have 3 full-time staff, 1 half-time OA, 18 students. That's the staffing model.
Yes, I agree.
Moving on to KCW with their $451,000 and $153 request.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just taking out all those pages now. Eighty-eight point Wendelberg.
Because they have a lot of maintenance stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's your binder. You do whatever you want.
Supplemental to replace some of the stuff. Their batteries are. So they came for supplemental last quarter to replace some of their like batteries and get this stuff so they can test because it's heavy, like that stuff is heavy tech and their batteries were like so behind on their life. And if stuff had happened like a storm and we shut down, it wouldn't be able to work as like a I don't know, I forgot what it's called, but like to warn people or like to talk. Yeah, probably broadcast. Thank you, Robbie.
My understanding is that if memory serves, they are also experiencing frequency leakage into frequencies that aren't theirs or catching like it's not accurate anymore.
Yeah, because they came and asked us for like the money to do that testing kit so they don't leak into it. I don't remember what we did. It was like last quarter. But yeah.
I think we gave them that.
To read off the notes that I have for this, their request of the 75,000 has an additional self-support funds of 20,000. They have the supplemental that they came in incorporated into this base funding. They are moving from a proactive. They moved from a reactive stance to a proactive stance on their management of 81 Berg. They may have to come back for supplemental if the cost is lowered in any significant way, because the current amount gives them everything that they would need. All costs are increasing with their radio programs in particular. They had fixed costs that significantly increase it. And this has a $16,000 to $17,000 of additional cushioning, with the work study program not being too dependable to hire their staff full time.
One thing that concerns me about this one is that we got this $83,000 number in here for student wages and whatnot. But when in the report that they gave us, they said they have paid student roles that exist but aren't filled. So are these wages actually anticipated to be used if they came in halfway through the school year and still didn't have people in them?
From what I understood, the roles are currently filled, but previous years they had far more roles that were not being filled or they were not able to continue to fund. So those roles had to be supplemented with other areas within 88.1 LeBerg.
Okay, thank you.
They stated on their student payroll they have 7 to 8 students right now with 15 hours. With the majority of that being work study, which is how they've been able to afford some of their more immediate costs outside of supplemental. For those of you who aren't aware, work study, it's a 50-50 split between the state and whoever the employer is. If it's state work study, kind of depends. Federal, it can be a 70-30 split.
And I'm pretty sure they clarified they want to keep doing that as well. Like that's a practice they're going to continue to do.
Yeah. They did state that they do not want to be entirely dependent on the chance of work study, which is why they have the $16,000 to $17,000 cushioning to make up for potential positions that do need proper payment, which I believe a student working 15 hours for like the 3 quarters is like 7,000 something ish. Yeah.
What if we allowed them to have the cushion still, but just reduced the number slightly so the cushion isn't as big?
I would say that's a fair assessment. Are we thinking within a few thousand, or are we thinking like 10,000?
1 second, I got to do math.
Yeah. I was just going to say either consider a percentage perhaps. And then the other thing, remember, is that if you give them the money and they don't spend it, it all comes right back into as your supplemental budget.
Right, I remember that. I just my understanding is that if we were to make a choice like this right now, as opposed to giving it to them and waiting to see if they spend it, we might be able to fund something that otherwise might not get funded today.
If we cut them by, let's say, a flat 2%, that would bring them down to 442,000, which would cut their cushioning by 9,000 roughly.
I don't think that sounds very bad. That's like one position or just under that.
I mean, I think it is smart because if they're able to get everything up in working order or whatever they need, then if they need supplemental, it kind of balances out.
I agree. And also, again, they can do what they wish with the money that we give them. So if they choose to maybe still fund a position, they can still cut it in other areas as well. But I think for the sake of the committee, it's would be a good idea to minimize that cushioning, and make sure that money goes to somewhere else that maybe needs it a little bit more.
For reference, if we do the 2% cut for the 88.1 the Berg, that would save us $9,020. Oh, yes, $9,23.06. Yep.
I might be, and y'all feel free to hold me back, but I might be a little aggressive on this. I think 3%. If we can get away with it, we should go for it.
The only reason that I would recommend 2% is because I'm trying to think about a percentage cut we can do across the board. With the significantly larger areas, that 3% goes from maybe like 20,000 to like 60. You know, not exact math, but
I hear what you're saying.
Do we feel comfortable about the 2% cut? Okay, dokie.
Yes.
Good. We are like one hundredth there. Alrighty. With that in mind, we will be moving on to our third highest, which would be Slice. Yes. Alrighty. Slice with their request of $448,650.
Does this cover all of their requests, or is this like, because I know they had a few different ones.
So this is just one budget. This is their main budget.
This does not include clubs, campus activities, or student involvement. But this does predominantly include the professional staff salaries is the major driving force of this.
We are looking at just as else.
Correct.
Almost.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, but you all already voted to fund the student wage increase for all S&A budgets. So that Trent and Aaron will include as we forecast that. But we have traditionally not included staff increases. Those are not guaranteed. Sometimes they're partially funded by the state, and then CW has to make up the difference. But those also don't come to S&A areas because they're S&A funded and not state funded. So yeah, I know it gets complicated. So a lot of times when, even though they increase it, S&A doesn't always receive that increase because they're not funded, but the employees still receive the increase. So they have to work within that budget to make up the difference. Usually it's about 3%. Yep.
What day was the Slice
I was about to
presentation?
ask.
Quarterly action.
I also want to just note that Lola did follow up. It's in your guys's binder. I believe it's at the very end of the slice where I stuck the follow-up where we asked for more information, where you all asked for more information about how the funding is being spent.
There it is.
What one of these tabs are we working on?
February 13th.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking at Slice, and I will give everybody a moment to find it, February 13th.
Should be the first yellow sheet after the February 13th tab. Student involvement, then Slice. Or sorry, mine's yellow, yours pink, sorry. Yours is pink sheets.
What is that?
I think it's yeah. one.
So I have a note that I wrote down that says supplemental 52,000. Was that I did not have any other clarification for like writing on there. Um, do you know what that supplemental was for? Or like if they're anticipating on coming back? I wrote it down for some reason. I just didn't give myself enough information for present me.
Did you write that down for slice, or was that on this bigger paper?
Well, if we're discussing slice, it might not be the most deliberate method or the most detailed method, but we could just do another 2% cut where we could look at them and we could cross-reference it with the amount of total programming they have, the amount of total student salaries they have to see how much of an impact it could potentially have. Okay, we can see.
Okay, let's just see.
Hypotheticals are good in this scenario.
Considering the leadership programs in the community engagement have a total of the 50,000 and 47,000 respectively, the $8,000 could be split between the two pretty evenly.
Doing that 2% on the last two allocations would essentially give us enough to fund Pulse. So I don't think these are bad moves.
As a good reference point, Pulse,
I'm in the same mindset of wanting to preserve the observer in the pulse as well.
So are we feeling like a 2% cut for slice is an effective move for just a baseline for now?
I'm just wary of it. I mean, it's not up to us, but I'm just wary of it going into student wages, like them cutting student wages because of it.
I think it could cut hours. I feel like slice is a really
Interesting.
fragile topic because it's like student life. So if like what I mean is it could heavily affect not only them but also this whole student body as a whole because they may not be very happy if we cut too much because slice is like one of those things where it's like a lot of people are affected by it, whereas something else, I don't know. I don't know.
think, oh, sorry.
Oh, that means there's multiple people on the thing right now.
If we consider,
Abby.
I think there was that whole ordeal when Pulse and Observer were cut. And do you know? I don't know how to say it. I don't want to upset the student body too much because I feel like this is one of those things that they really do care about.
I do think the 2% is not that drastic. Like I think 8,000, or what was it? The 8,000. And I think that's pretty reasonable. I was just stating a fear that I have.
back to like number 16, the areas that are already funded. And then bringing on new areas to be.
I absolutely hear what Abby is saying, but and what Rachel is saying. But as far as Slice, looking at their numbers, most of what they do, most of what they pay for actually isn't the students in the first place. It's easy to see the impact that Slice has because they're kind of the hub that everything else connects to. But the vast majority of their money isn't going to students' wages or benefits, anyways. Um, One might hope that they would put the students in the first after their salary, but I don't think that this. I mean, they're asking for almost $500,000, and they would be getting still almost $500,000. I don't think that it'd be hard to imagine that that would cause too much panic, especially since this number that we keep using, we're using it in instances where it's not even taken away enough to hypothetically completely remove a single student position on its own.
That's fair. I agree with that.
I have a clarifying question. The 7% cut, is it assuming that we choose to fund every single program?
Average for the 7%. That's just like if you took 7% reduction across the remaining areas.
Yeah. So what? Yeah.
It's important also to be intentional. 7% of this budget be different than, of course, like the 7% budget. If you wanted to see like what a
And we absolutely have to hit zero, right? We can't go in the negatives.
So we're seeking parity.
Yes. And I would also just like to share that that has been the model that the Board of Trustees has placed at the president's level and then down to those of us who oversee budgets is you can only spend what you have. You cannot overspend. So unfortunately, Abby, yes, we need to get to zero.
I would also like to point out, looking at the S&A based funding information they've given us of 2026 and the program information they've given us for FY27, it seems like they've already lowered their operating and programming by about $20,000, roughly, at least going by the numbers given here with leadership programs and community engagement. Those two for FY26 was 97,000, and they're requesting 70,000 for goods and services as a whole for Slice now. Just as a piece of information there that I just noticed. In regards to the 2% cut to Slice as well, I would also like to remind the committee, this is the main Slice base funding area. This does not include Slice campus activities, Slice club travel, Slice publicity center, or Slice student involvement.
And I would also like just to clarify in that because Abby asked this question earlier. So remember that Slice is like, think of an umbrella. Slice sits at the top. Campus activities, student involvement, club travel, ASCWU are kind of like the little covers of your umbrella. So yes, I know looking at it, you add all those together and you're like, oh my gosh. But remember that Slice is just the overarching area, and they have individual budgets, just like student government has an overarching budget and little rungs down to support different programs.
Question. If something goes wrong, for example, with the I don't know enough about umbrella anatomy for this, so I'm gonna talk spokes on a wheel. If something goes wrong, one of the spokes on that wheel breaks or is potentially underfunded a little bit, does Slice attempt does Slice do anything for them, or is that all just attached and thrown at us with different numbers?
I think that's a great question, boss. So for instance, Lola's asked yesterday to reallocate money. Slice found that they were going to have an extra 8,500. So they're supporting another one of those spokes by giving it 8,500. So I think that there is a general assumption that if they can, they would have to come to S&A and ask for a reallocation of money. But it could also be that they could come and ask for supplemental.
Noted. Thank you.
I'm looking at what this specific funding would be used for. I'm kind of inclined to cut the overarching umbrella and then redistribute that money into some of the smaller parts of the umbrella, if that makes any sense. Some of the smaller programs that are facilitated by Slice, if that makes any sense.
I second that, especially considering how much trouble travel has.
I wanted to ask, so does that mean like cut more from the main part and then cut less or not at all from the smaller ones? Smaller branches?
That is what I'm considering, yes.
I'm playing both sides here. If we were to cut more from the main body of Slice, that would also mean that is where a lot of the student staff and salaries come from. And like Abby said, if we were to cut more so into that area, we could see less programming from the student leadership and the student engagement areas, but we could also see more funding for the smaller areas, but less funding for the student staff in general. Just playing both sides here. Apologies.
I also do want to say, looking at the leadership programs in the page before the pink sheet, I don't think these events require them to kind of collaborate with external people or external programs. So I think that these are some of the things that they may not have the power to change, just because, like, for example, certain speakers may have certain rates. So if we defund, it may completely cut some of these programs, because I don't know.
If we're talking about the leadership workshops and whatnot that Slice puts on, is that what we're talking about? I've actually been in one of those, and they don't. I mean, most of their speakers come from within the school. Yeah, and you're doing pretty much PowerPoints and stuff on. It's not particularly expensive. The most expensive thing's got to be like Tommy's salary.
I think we should,
Yeah.
yeah. That's valuable information, but I think we should also make our decisions based off of what we've been presented by the organizations, not our outside knowledge.
Fair.
And I was going to say, remember, y'all, as you're going into this, that unfortunately you can't control what they're going to cut. you have to make the decision to the best of your ability. So if you cut them 2% and they cut a leadership program, that was how they dealt with that. If unfortunately they cut a student wage, that's how they dealt with that. We have no control over how they're doing that. And we could spend all day assuming how somebody's going to deal with that budget cut. But I just want to put that out there.
With that in mind, are we feeling as if the main body of slice should take a 2% cut or potentially higher?
I'm still here for 3.
I could see where little bit higher could help, because like especially like knowing, I'm not saying for sure yes on agreeing on that. I'm still very on the fence. But when it mentioned like, let's say we were to fund everyone and it have to be like what you said, like 7%.
It's like 5%.
5 to 7% from all. So I do feel like if we do keep with these low percentages, then we're going to get to a point that we are going to have quite a few of these smaller groups that are going to be completely cut.
Then my recommendation, based on what I'm hearing from the committee, I would say let's continue on with the 2% cut for now, and then once we get through the list itself, we can go back to redeliberation to see if more areas could take a slightly bigger percentage. Just as a general idea for now, we should go forward thinking 2% for now, and then we'll see where we're at the end of this.
I agree with that.
I agree too, and I just want to ask Erin, can we see what a 3% cut would look like?
$13,459.50.
Okay. 21,248 that we got to cut. It's like 1/12.
I think your plan sounds reasonable.
Okay.
You all just making a ask, would you all like Erin to take that 3% down the spreadsheet and see where that gets you at a certain level? Or do you want to keep going percentage by percentage?
I would say
Time.
no.
Yes, but there are some that I have a little input on, especially when I wasn't here to vote and talk about the ECLC a little. So that's the one that I have some stuff with.
So let's go forward with the 2% cut, and I will just put a note next to the slice that we are considering further percentages as well.
Okay, so our next one is West Side Centers, and that is Kurt. He came yesterday. So this is a West Side Center student life and activities. So it would have been March 6th.
I think that considering that they pay the same amount as us, but they don't get to experience as us, I personally don't feel that it would be fair for us to cut their funding just because we're all paying the same amount, but we at the Ellensburg campus are able to reap more benefits off of our S&A dollars. But that's just a personal opinion of mine.
Question: do we know like approximately how many students are in all that?
Yeah, so he mentioned yesterday that there are 450 students at the center locations and 1,300 online. So a total of 1750.
A small number.
Isn't it very similar to the career services West Side numbers almost?
Yes.
Are these numbers included in the 8,100 that we typically hear about?
Yes, it is.
So almost a quarter of our student population is actually the people we're talking about now.
You got it.
With that,
Right.
With that in mind, my personal stance at the moment is to just leave it alone, leave this funding alone. I don't see any benefit in cutting further for the online programs.
Yeah, I feel like this one sticks us right between morality and obligation.
So I wanted to add, so I just
Nick, you'd have to times that by 3 because they say 3 times a quarter.
I heard 1,700.
yeah.
Yeah. They're between the.
Just as a heads up, we will be taking a break soon.
That's fine.
That for the.
I'm trying to keep his
Spirit, what he would like.
yes, I'm trying to keep him in mind in our decisions. Which I mean, we're on the same boat, so in a way, yeah, we're both. He's the student wages rep.
We're on a boat. He's got a megaphone shouting that at everybody he uses.
So I did update,
For reference, we have so far saved $17,996.
I wanted to ask a question. Did we make a decision for West Side stuff? No? Okay.
Wait, the decision,
Or like recommendation, I mean.
the recommendation is to leave it alone for now. We're also waiting for Robbie to get back so we can go on break. So, but I'll be honest, guys. looking at the current situation and the trend that we are going down with our 2% cuts, it is likely that we should be able to get there with what we have currently, with making some potential decisions on more percentages than others. It is unlikely that we will have to cut anybody by more than $30,000 to $40,000. Okay, we will be going into our break for the next 25 minutes, 25 to half an hour. All right, y'all, let's reconvene. There is something that has been brought to my attention that I would like to bring up to the committee itself. So, if we had continued to go down the 2% cut for the rest of this, in actuality, it would have only saved us around $66,000. It's not enough for the 248,000 that we would need to hit. However, there is an area that I do think we should deliberate on a bit more specifically. And that would be the music department travel, because it is a new area completely that has historical backing with S&A funding. However, I want to point it out to the committee.
That was the music
Mhm.
travel? Okay.
Now, yes, now with the breakdowns and everything that we are seeing, in my personal opinion, I do not believe that this is the year for music travel funding, especially because it seems most of their outside sources of funding are coming from Horn Club or these other areas, and class fees, which, while might not be directly violating the Killian guidelines, I do believe it is just not the year for it.
Other than benefiting their students, it doesn't really seem like it benefits. And I mean, anything else? It'd be different if it was like under music itself and they were asking for just their classes, not the clubs. But yeah, I get what you're trying to do. What we're trying to do.
Yes. Now, while there is, sorry, Bob, go ahead.
So to clarify, what we're looking at here is specifically for traveling for the students from the music department who are already in one of the classes related to the music department. Oh, and this allocation here is not like a music club. Okay.
So for reference, that these is for, so when I asked them about the separation between the classes, the academic side of this and the S&A side of this, the answer that was given was, while not necessarily tied to the academic side of it, it is still within the sphere because these music majors need this travel in order to prolong their careers, essentially. So it's not tied to anything academically, technically. However, it is predominantly only used for people within those kind of areas. Now, with that being said, as chair of the committee, I have to make a lot of harsh opinions. While I am somebody who is actively fighting for no area to go completely unfunded, I do want to open the conversation for potentially not funding this music department travel base funded area in full.
I would really like to look at the if we have we've been able to get a lot of numbers that I didn't expect us to have today. Do we happen to have information about how many students S&A fees are going towards this? That is to say, I know that everybody pays an S&A fee, but for example, the students that are benefiting from this, how many of them we've established that it's only essentially the students from that department. How many students are there?
But also looking at it, um, it goes back and forth of like how much is funded from S&A. Like this last 2025, it was a lot less than 2024. That's what it looks like.
Not have any S&A
Okay.
funding.
Yeah.
They're not a current base funded area, so this would be considered, even though they have been funded in the past. This isn't like, let's say Observer who had been funded in the past and this is their 1 year, sort of. They were not funded for the last 5 years. They stopped funding this department in 2021.
Yeah, I see that.
So this is considered a new area, so you would want to take that into.
I also noticed that one of the first things that they say, and therefore, so because this is the first thing that they noted in their answer to the question, how does the program support the university's vision and mission? I'm going to get to what they said that is relevant to what I'm trying to say, but because this is the first thing that they said, I feel like it's safe to conclude that this is their primary goal for receiving this funding. They said that they strengthen recruitment, foster community engagement, and enrich the educational experience of students. But again, we've established that this is just the students from this program. And I believe also earlier we established that it's not necessarily our job to recruit. Alrighty. I'm inclined to back the chair up on his decision with this one.
Now, with this in mind, I do want to keep the greater goal of student experience in mind. I want it to be known for the record, while CWU music and student travel is something that would greatly benefit the student experience, I simply believe, even outside of the recruitment and even outside of the various murky waters of the academic level, this is just not the year for this. If this was any other year, I would have advocated that we give them something. But based on what they've been saying, it seems like these funds are for emergency purposes of last minute uh, travel for these student music majors. So, with that in mind, how does the committee feel about not funding the CWU music student travel?
Clarifying question.
Mhm.
Making this decision, if we choose not to fund them, and we stick to our previous route with the 2% here, 2% there, allocation reductions, that brings us to what we need, or just
Not-
about what we need. Does it not?
If we wanted to fully cut this along with a 5% a cut across the areas we've already done, that would get us to the place we need to be. However, this in particular would help us at least get there a third. Well, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I did bad math. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Especially since I feel like in their presentation they kind of proved that the students were able to um, fundraise and find the funding through the community, especially with donors. Obviously, they didn't say that was guaranteed, but they seemed like they had managed to fund their previous travel expenses through student involvement and community participation. And so I think it's fair to say that if they've done it before, they can do it again. And I agree, it would, since it's new, I think it's just not the time to fully fund them or just really give them anything at the moment.
Yeah, for me, I came in thinking like, I don't want to see anyone completely not giving them anything, but after hearing of like what's all been said, like with it, I have to agree that yeah, it's just not the year especially also looking at their breakdown. Where was it? Am I blinding? Oh, it's this. Yes. Seeing how the amount that they get from course fees, donations, and then compare that to how much they're asking for, it seems like they're not going to be completely stranded in the water. They still have other ways of funding. This is, yeah, like it's just help them a little more. But we have other areas that have been completely cut in the past that need to help.
Yeah, coming from that, I agree, especially when several of the clubs do weekly things every Wednesday. The Horn and Trumpet Club do a bagel thing, so they have their way of fundraising.
With this in mind, this does open up the conversation for the arts as a whole, which we do need to discuss theater in particular. If we are choosing to not fund music and their music travel, then why should we or should not fund? Why should we or should we not fund theater?
So, first of all, because I've been up in the theater while we've been finishing the set this week. If it does, we don't fund theater and film and all that. It just means it puts a lot more on our faculty, and the faculty will be doing it because one of our faculty that does the sets is disabled in some way or form, and they have, sorry, not she, they have a harder time doing it and spending a lot of time on their feet. And so the carpenters for the 12th night have been putting a lot of time in, and they're currently having a hard time paying all of them, and they're pulling from whatever money they have left. Go.
With that in mind, that is outside information, not presented. No worries. However, I understand where you're coming from with this, but I will open up for the rest of the committee to speak before I get my own opinion.
So on here, we're talking the art gallery, correct?
We are talking theater, arts, and film right now with the $30,000 recommendation. That is in that. The only reason the recommendation right now is to not fund due to it not being the fiscal year. However, I only bring up theater, arts, and film in particularly because outside of pep band, it is the closest that we have in terms of the art field in our base funded areas. Because if we are not funding the music majors, what benefits are there for the theater majors to be funded as well? I'm simply opening up the conversation for this. Austin.
First question was actually, do we know where is this in our binder for them? Let's see there.
January 30th.
Long time ago. That's why. Okay, and then while I look for, cool.
So I heard that this would be, if we did this, this would be something that the faculty would end up having to make up for. So we wouldn't necessarily be harming the students as much. In addition to that, please forgive me if this is. I don't tend to score particularly high on empathy, but as a disabled person, I don't think that we should. How do I don't want to be ableist at the disabled person and use their disability as a reason why we shouldn't help the students.
Just a lot of things pop into my head. This is off the best.
There's a reason I'm having us talk about this because I know I don't think it's a good idea that we are going down the list. I think we need to hit the areas that we need to talk about most first for this day. So with that in mind, Abby.
If I may, looking at the document for theater and film, it seems that all of the S&A funds that we allocate would go to student payroll. So from my point of view, if we were to not fund theater, the students would be directly affected. And forgive me for if I choose the wrong words, but for the music trip, it is a kind of leisure activity. It's not going to negatively impact them as much as theater students losing their jobs, but this is of my opinion.
Yeah, so that's where like I'm looking when looking on here for music, they're showing that they get money from these other localities. While here for theater, they're showing that they're fully dependent on S&A. And then we're seeing, and then I would say agree with everything that I've said.
Just kind of adding on to what you both have said, I think we're talking about two completely different situations when it comes to the music department's transportation and travel funds and the theater program with student wages. I don't think cutting the I know we've moved past the music program, but I'm just saying I don't think cutting or not willing to fund that is making a big statement on the arts program as a whole. It's more about what our funds could be going to and what we think students are able to do on their own as well. And so with the theater program, I think if it's strictly with student wages, I don't see an issue with fully funding them. But yeah, I think we can make cuts in the arts program without making a statement that we don't like the arts program.
With at the same time, I remember I know y'all are talking about student. Oh.
Okay. I would just like to add on for the music travel, I believe we are giving them funds for them to travel elsewhere, to perform elsewhere, which means that the only beneficiaries of the S&A dollars would be the music students, whereas with theater, if we fund the student payroll, they would be able to put on a show for central students to watch. So more people would be able to benefit, more students would be able to benefit from that.
I hear what we're saying about the student payroll. If I'm remembering correctly, they already pay those students. Do they not?
So the pot, they got a bunch of money from somebody, like a donation, and that money is almost out. And so that's what I was trying to say. They're struggling. They have an employee that is not this quarter, so they were like, we're gonna take it because they fully dropped out as of halfway through. And so they're breaking up the money of that person's thing to give to one of the other employees is just kind of hard because they're almost out of it.
I would like to answer your question a little bit further. So last year, the committee decided not to fund theater arts because of one of the Killian guidelines, which was they felt that this is an institutional need. Why should it be funded by the students? Right? If you're going to offer a theater production program, shouldn't you have funding to pay students to learn how to produce, build sets, and fund things like that? So that was the decision of the committee last year.
And it sounds like they're still relying on us for funding.
They got, as Eros mentioned, they got a donor last year because of the cut.
Okay.
A donor made a one-time donation to fund them this year, knowing that they could come back to S&A and continue to seek funding for their staff wages.
So, I heard that it was decided that it was an institutional need. So they took a break, 1 year break.
So, okay, it's complicated. So because last year's committee had to cut $1.5 million, there were a lot of areas affected. And the Board of Trustees, because of some of the feedback from and public comment of cutting these areas, the Board of Trustees went against normal tradition and said, we will allow the S&A recommendations for 1 year, but we think that everybody needs to come back. And this is why we're doing it again to fund for the following 3, because we should have funded on a 4-year cycle. But the Board of Trustees wanted to hear out the areas that were affected, wanted to respect the committee's decision, and said, this is our compromise.
Yeah, this is just made a little confusing by not seeing those numbers on this particular
Because they
chart.
technically were not funded last year, but previously had been in previous quadrenniums.
All right. So this 30,000 should go to the students that would get laid off if we don't fund them.
It is also bi-quarterly, so every quarter. So they do several employees for each of the 3 shops. And I think that's what Tina said too in her thing.
It's basically funding their staff. We are funding student positions for theater and film areas. So both, I think if I remember, I'll make 2 film students and 3 theater arts students.
There's 2 for the costume shop, 2 for the cine, but I think they could cut it down to, that.
And I was just going to add that real quick. I think it's a great, we're looking at not funding at all or doing the 5% cut. There is a place in the middle too,
Correct.
Right? With some of these areas where it doesn't just have to be one or the other. It could be somewhere in between.
I think personally, I'm leaning towards somewhere in between for this one. Because I'm here, I got a lot of clarification. This is not my part of the school. I do public policy. It sounds like they put on plays and whatnot multiple times a year. Regardless of what happens, they seem to figure it out. And these spots for professional development that are filled to put on these plays are by students from these departments. So we're paying them to put on the plays?
We're paying students to build sets, make costumes, do carpentry work.
The stuff that they came to school wanting to do?
Sometimes. They also hire as well because it will just teach people skills. And then for film, they just have people in the renting room to make sure all the equipment gets out correctly. And that's, I'm pretty sure, what Tina said too in her thing.
Yes, and they don't have to be theater arts students. So for instance, I know in the past they've had an aviation student who worked as a carpenter.
Yeah.
but it basically is to support the program, right? And there is no, as Tina mentioned in her thing, there's nothing within 100-mile radius for these students to gain that experience that they could then go out and do in the professional environment. We're providing that for them.
Oh, they can only put it on their CV then if they get paid for it.
I think that it would be asking students to work not be paid. So you're asking them to volunteer to do this type of work versus paying them to gain the experience.
In the presentation, I remember her saying that there were 6 students, so 2 carpenters, 2 stitches, 2 equipment technicians, and they're all getting paid for work of 10 hours a week, but she said that they were all working well over 10 hours a week, but voluntarily because it takes a lot of time to create those sets and costumes. And I did ask her whether the sets were reused. I think she said they were reused, so they don't spend that much on goods and services to repurchase the materials.
Okay, I hear what I'm doing now. Thank you.
I would also like to clarify something that I think is kind of lost in the weeds of the term theater. A lot of these positions are physical labor positions. These are people constructing, these are people sewing, these are people creating things. These are not simply, we're not paying actors. We are paying, in my opinion, physical laborers for the job that they do for theater. With that being said, I personally, the difference with theater in regards to a lot of the other arts areas is that this is an active area, an active base funded area that we see in the arts field. As far as I'm aware, theater hosts one play every single quarter.
As well as depending, some activities are also done in share with other programs, dance, the fashion show, and orchesis. And sometimes those are volunteered, but sometimes there are paid employees from both shops.
With that in mind, we are currently having to cut over $100,000. With
Y'all talked me out of this one.
With that in mind, a 5% cut would only take about $800 from the theater arts program. It would be $29,292 is what they would be left with, which in the grand scheme of things is not a whole lot, honestly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, from what I'm hearing from the committee, this is an area that has a campus presence, which I think is what we also need to keep in mind. We are funding areas that should be actively encouraging and empowering the student experience with the Services and Activities Committee. With everything being said, what do we feel like is a fair verdict for the theater arts area?
To quote Cordone, I'm all for student wages. So if it was up to me, I would be wary of cutting at all. But in the best interest of the committee, I would say maybe like 3%. What I would go for, personally.
I am very wary of cutting, considering the fact that they are all of the money is going to go to student wages, and the students are already giving voluntary hours. I think that if we were to cut it, they would have to give more voluntary hours, and that is not a thought that I don't think I would be able to sleep at night.
So how much was 5% would have been?
The 5% cut is roughly 1,500.
Okay. So that would mean if we were, let's say, not to do that, then it would be like, okay, we would have to remove another 1,500 somewhere through here spread out. And we do know generally, so we do need to do about 5% in total. So that would mean there would be a cut somewhere else for sure. So that's just, that was just me
There would
saying,
be
like,
the
for everyone to be
equivalent
aware.
of a 5% cut in theaters somewhere else. So a 1,500 cut somewhere else, essentially.
And that is not me giving any opinion on what I say for this. It's just me throwing out there.
Well,
I was completely talked out of my original stance on this. But I don't think it's too much to try and inspire people to do a little bit of their own fundraising. It still sounds like they are asking to be completely taken care of by us. And I don't want to cut too much, but I also I very much don't want to turn off the faucet on this one, but I have no recommendation for numbers after the conversation that we just had.
right. After that, we'll go to Abby and the Narrows.
Did Tina, I don't remember. I don't know what's it. And then the other fundraising we have is the shows. Other than that, there's not much.
Yeah, so the shows collect revenue though, like there's ticket sales, like these.
Where does that go?
And so it's not. Numbers will be divided.
Right.
It's
It's not S&A funding, so they don't have to tell us where that money goes. So it's probably going to fund other theater department things. Yeah.
I would like to say I think cutting 1,500 would hurt theater a lot more than if we were to cut it from a different department. Again, if Cordon was here, just because it's all student wages. And another thing is theater has, in my opinion, a huge student presence. So I think hypothetically, if we were to cut theater, that would anger a lot of people, not only because it's theater, but again, because it's also student wages.
Just to clarify, this is the quest is for 6 employees or 4 employees? 6. Okay.
And then, one other thing to keep in mind is the two that are doing the film, those, that being able to check out the equipment and stuff is only, available for the theater students. So those students that are, that is great experience, but it's not, a service that's open to all students.
Yes, it's open to the people.
And the one thing I will add just about like student wages in general is unfortunately the cut will have to come from somewhere else, and most places do also have student wages. So while saving student wages in one area, you're most likely going to affect student wages in another. And that's just gonna be the unfortunate thing that we bump into as we do this process.
As we discuss this, for the sake of time, I am going to say, sounds like the committee is likely going to be under deliberation for this for a bit longer. So I will say we will go forward, assuming that this will not be cut.
I revisit it.
We will revisit this,
Okay.
but going forward, we will be assuming that we will be funding this in full. Seeing as the majority seems to be aiming for that. Are we okay with that for the time being?
Yes.
No. Alrighty. Yep.
I would say let's move to the next one.
Top, start with the UCLC would be your next part.
Yes. All right. We have not made it. The Early Childhood Learning Center. Yeah. Yeah. That was just to get those two out of the discussion pool. ECLC, the Early Childhood Learning Center, with their request for $349,094. However, this does not fully represent the ECLC as the committee recommended them to come back with base funding to cover their floor costs to replace their flooring.
Which is going to be covered in our
The first year of base funding
right.
from reserves, yes.
If approved. If approved.
I will be upfront and say this one's really difficult for me specifically because I am all for any level of education, and especially feeling like you're cutting from little kids is really hard to deal with. However, the amount of student parents that actually utilize the ECLC is very slim. And we need to be conscious of the fact that our funds are going to the best that we can for student experiences. So I cannot say I have a stance at the moment, personally.
I think it's admirable to care about the children, but our responsibility is to adults who are going to school here. And there are according to the enrollment numbers that we got today, there are 34, 52, 62 students. Oh, Jesus, I'm bad at math. Well, it's like, I'm just going to say it this way. There are 30 children of faculty, 4 of alumni, so 34 of people, students there who belong to somebody who's not going to school here, who's not paying this S&A fee, and only 18 children belonging to people who are paying this S&A fee. So the money for this one will predominantly go to people who are not paying for this.
And I would like to make a point of clarification. Technically, they're paying. We're just going to support the overarching costs of running a daycare, but the faculty and staff are paying, I think, $10 more. So they are paying. No. Sorry, they're paying a daily fee to take their kiddo to the daycare.
Oh, I didn't mean that they weren't paying for the daycare services. I meant this S&A fee that we are the ones that have to make a choice about.
Yes. So for the student parents, they're paying the S&A fee to Ball's point, but they're also paying a daily fee to put their child in daycare. The faculty and staff are not paying the S&A fee, but are also paying to put their child in daycare. Oh, did I clear that up? Or did I make it worse?
And the students pay a
lesser
lesser
fee.
rate than what the full-time people do. They also get priority as the first people in if there's a spot available.
Safe to assume less than.
There's I would say.
Yeah, I do think they are one of the only areas that spend more on student labor than their allocation too. So they spend $400,000 a year just on student labor.
Eros?
Don't the numbers change per quarter too? Okay.
2 quarters.
Yeah.
So fall 20 into 26. If you turn that page over, it's a bubble.
I would like to, as chair of the committee, tough decisions need to be made. My personal recommendation would be to cut them around 3%, which is around $10,000. This is a larger area that has taken significant cuts in the previous quadrennium. We have seen that they are able to adapt. We have seen that they are able to function, especially with the amount of students that are currently enrolled that have their children within the ECLC. I would say a $10,000 cut would bring us up to $90,000 saved, and I believe it would be a fair amount based off of what we already have of the 9,000 from the 2% cut and the close to 9,000 from the other 2% cut and the 63,000 from the music travel. If we cut them by 10,000, or we could choose to do another flat percentage, have it to be in between the 2 to 5% range, and we can have that decide.
Clarify the numbers Alex is speaking to, because I think we might be double dipping in that number.
Okay, because right now they're asking for 349,094. But remember, that's including. Yes.
Which
So-
we've already promised to give them in base funding.
You guys haven't promised anything. Actually, it's on the table. Yeah.
Anything, but I just want to make sure that we're, like, when we look at, this, let me undo. what I
Oh, the
just
money
did.
that they're gonna throw.
When I'm looking at, when we're 349,000, this includes one-time money for the floor. And
State
so
will spend.
I think we should sort of.
For reference as well, a 5% cut from ECLC would be roughly $18,000.
It was
Yes,
so only
18, 19. Oh, really?
It depends on how more. I'm very kind of confident because if your number is taking also 5% of the
Yeah.
of the flooring
Gotcha.
cost, and so
Which will then raise our.
I just kind of
Yeah, gotcha.
did. I just excluded the 53,000 for now.
Gotcha.
I think that we should make that decision a little separate, and will help with this because it's not. It is part of their base funding request, but it's not part of their like operating expenses.
What I'm hearing you say is they're gonna spend more money.
They're
So
gonna
what
spend
we're addressing is gonna be, how they're, the decisions that they'll make after that are what we're writing.
Yeah, what's on top of that?
Yes, and how much was the floor money again?
50/50. Savings, and you don't have to consider it part of what you have to cut.
regardless, 34%, roughly 35% of the little ones that are being taken care of here actually belong to students. So I don't mind defunding this one a little bit. It's I really don't like taking away from the young ones, but it's not our job to educate them with the services and activities fee committee.
Looking at this from an objective standpoint, services and activities fees has very strict guidelines on what we can and cannot have the funds be used for. One of our biggest priorities is this something on the student facing level? From where I'm standing, a 3 to 5% cut yes, it will significantly impact in some ways. However, we need to keep in mind that this is one of our largest areas. This is one of the areas that can take a significant hit and still remain operational to a decent degree, as opposed to our smaller areas who, if we give them the same $5,000, $6,000 cut, they will not remain operational.
What's also interesting is that some of those smaller areas, even despite how much smaller their requests are, serve more students. I know life's not easy for young folk with kids, but if we're seeking to benefit the largest number of students possible, best case scenario in this situation, we help like 30 students.
All right. So I
agree.
Okay. I just want because I keep going back to like thinking of everything as like and this after removing the 50,000 as like a 5% base. So if we did less than 5%, so like 5% would be, I think I have my number a little wrong. Total 1404. But then if we did, let's say, been mentioned 3%, then that's going to be what we're looking at, almost 5,000 or oh yeah, you're amazing. But the difference between those two, what we're seeing is that difference. So if we did 3%, that difference from that 3 to 5 would have to be cut from somewhere else. So that's why I support doing a 5%. Just say on there.
I do as well. Yes.
Maybe I'm evil, but I'm willing to double it. Like I said, we're only serving 30-ish students here.
From the standpoint that I'm in, I would say let's keep it at the 5% for now. Once we go into further deliberation, I would say we can keep the ECLC in mind. However, with the 5% base that we have now, I would also want to go back to our previous 2% cuts and go back and double around to see what the 5% cuts for those as well would be.
I think that's rational.
My argument for this would be a cap of like a $20,000 cut, like the maximum.
I would say that this brings up a larger conversation that I don't know if we'll be able to have, of what exactly is the limit of what we're willing to cut, because we obviously can't go 100,000 from a single area, because that's not, with the areas that we have currently, is not feasible to do that without significantly screwing over a lot of the infrastructural work of the CERC or CWU as a whole.
To me, and everybody should be able to, I think everybody should voice their opinion and answer this one. This is a very important question. For me, I think $30,000 is like the worst I'm willing to do to any particular group.
Mine would be 25, but that's even reaching. I'm kind of sticking with 20 grand at the moment.
Percent reduction too.
Yes.
CWU and slice. Do you want to change those? To here to.
I would say let's see it. Simply because those are our highest funded areas. That 5% cut will be at least significantly a little bit higher than compared to the other smaller areas with the 5% cut.
That's my thought process.
That's the thoughts of the committee at least. Here's my recommendation. Because these two are our top S&A funded areas, inevitably these percentage cuts are going to be higher. I would recommend a 3 to 4% cut for the top two areas. That way, we are not significantly hitting them in the getting them below their funding from this year, while still giving them a little bit of wiggle room. Maybe not exactly what they need, but more than they are currently getting.
So then I have to pose the question, because you're doing that to those two, are you still going to fully fund the MCC and fully fund the centers and activities? Because they are also asking the highest hitters.
With looking at the MCC, I could say some redeliberation could be had. With centers in particular, I think it might be a bit more difficult simply because most of those are operational and professional costs that we cannot make up for outside of and also considering the online students.
Yeah, and that's the number of online students and how little they already gain from paying as much as everybody else for this fee. I'm inclined to leave that one alone, but I think it might be uh what's the word? Dutiful, prudent even to go back and reconsider the MCC.
We need to keep in mind where these funds would be coming from. They would likely be coming from programming or more likely student wages.
That probably means they won't be able to do be as open as late as they want, is what it seems like. Because that's what the big push, or the big thing he talked about yesterday was.
Is our priority as a committee funding the smaller areas who, by virtue of simply not having as much money, will be getting hit less? Or is our goal as a committee minimizing the cost and minimizing the impact for the higher staked committees or for the higher stake areas while quote unquote skimming off the top of the smaller areas in order to make up for some of the
I personally would say neither. I think we should prioritize the ones that affect the students the most, regardless of the size. For example, a department may be asking for a lot, but maybe they're not positively impacting a lot of students, or the latter, maybe a department is asking for a small amount, but they could be reaching out to a lot of students and helping a lot of students. So I personally would prioritize the value at which we are providing the funds and how much the students will receive in return.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with the idea that the priority should be number of students aided in total, not just in the department that we're funding, but what they do for the students on campus. Like how many events and whatnot. This is why the MCC is so hard for me because they put on events for everybody.
Rachel.
Can be different, go through all of them back, we may adding more back to some and taking some away, or we might not get it right the first go through, yeah.
Rachel, do you have something?
So for MC, this was it at 94.
Are we okay with leaving it at the 4% cut for now?
Yes.
Or are we considering lowering the percentage cut? If so, we will need proper justification for why this percentage has been lowered as opposed to the other areas.
I think that we could use that as a placeholder for now, and then if we feel like would like to come back to it, we can. But I think that would be fair, for the departments to receive somewhat similar cuts.
Yeah, I agree with Abby on this. I was gonna say 5%, but I think 4% is a good place for now because, and I keep going back to that, thinking of if we don't do 5%, if we do less than that, then that's more taken out from somewhere else. So that's still that proportion is gonna be offsetting rather, yeah.
I would like to suggest that we table this just because we have a little over half an hour left until our session is over. So I would like to move on and try and get as much done as we can today.
With that
And we
in
can
mind-
relook at it tomorrow.
With that in mind, Aaron, can you please give us the numbers that we have of the amount of money we've currently saved? The mindset that we should be going forward, I would say not to worry about finishing within the week because the reason these conversations have taken so long is because the amount of money that they, as you can remember, some of the smaller areas we have not really taken too long to discuss, mostly because those are a lot easier to discuss. It's good to get these out of the way now so that for tomorrow we can speed through the rest of them that we can say maybe a small cut here because 5% for a $30,000 request is nothing as much for, so just keep that in mind. A question for the committee. At what general number range would we want to stop the 4% cut? Like within the 200,000 range of requesting or $100,000 as a general idea? Or would we want to go the 4% cut all the way down the list? Well, looking at the numbers of the current base funded areas that we have, there are
if we just filled everything else down with a 4%.
Somebody's going to need to take that 5. And if we're trying to, I don't know how much y'all care about fairness, but I know some people do. if we're trying to stay fair, we're not going to be able to. We're not going to be. It sounds like we're not hitting anybody with the 6%, for example. But we might have to hit 2 or 3 people with that 5.
I do have,
Or Lions Rock, or the Community Garden, or WSRN, or Menashtat.
I do have a recommendation as the representative of ACWU. Looking at, sorry to jump around, folks, but for lack of time. For looking at student government, the BOD has requested less than last year. So about 4,000 less. Legislative, Senate, and student life have all requested more. I can imagine we could reduce legislative by the 2,000 that they have requested so that we can put them back down to the 26,000. I could also see Senate going back down to the 65,000 and still remain functional. And for student life, I'm aware that most of that is actually for programming for Sweetie Day and a lot of the flagship events on campus. However, I do believe we could reduce that by another 5,000. So with that in mind, sorry, as the ASUU rep, I feel like I have liberty to say this. We would be saving potentially 150. Yeah. Reduce legislative. Aaron, could you reduce legislative down to 26,771?
Basically, he wants you to go back to what they got last year.
Legislative to what?
26,771. ASU Senate down to 66,127. And student life and facilities, for the sake of the increasing cost and the money that was ported over from the Senate for Sweetie Day, that would become 29,000 just flat, let's say.
So Alex, I apologize. Where's the $40,000 from the club insurance at?
That's in over clubs. Slice clubs is where it moved it over.
So it's not accounted for in any of the BOD budgets anymore.
No, what that was replaced with was the summer budget, the summer supplemental for the BOD to work over the summer.
Okay. So it's not accounted for in the reduction you're asking about.
No.
Okay.
What if the ones that we already decided 5% on? What if 5.5%?
There's only one budget you guys have cut 5%. That's ECLC.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Everything else has been
If we,
2 or 4.
I see.
There's quite a couple. There's a couple.
What?
And they have
They also have the
Okay, wait. So the centers is career services, West Side, and centers activities?
both of those for the online students. You guys also might want to look at, this will be unpopular, but you might want to look at the observer as well, because on that one, they didn't have in their original request, they didn't have any of the ad revenue included. And so on your sheet, if you look at observer, then their request for FY26 was 56,000. original request, so that might be a lever to pull.
To the point of the observer, I do also want to, I guess, clarify, they did send in an alternative budget, correct?
Then you're guys.
Mhm. No. Yeah, no, but yes, both Observer and Pulse did send in alternative budgets.
And I put it under observer, so polls.
I think we're getting there. I think we're definitely getting there. There's going to be some areas that are likely going to need to take the full 5% cut. We need to be aware of where we're cutting, but I think we are getting there. We're getting close, and I do believe we will be able to finish this by tomorrow.
What is what?
Can we talk about the publicity center?
Yes, we could talk about Publicity Center.
The publicity center is, if I remember correctly, there's another thing on this list that does a similar job. No?
I don't believe so. Publicity Center,
Can y'all help me with the date for that one?
yes.
Did we round out the Pulse and Observer conversation? Okay, can we please go back to that real
About
quick?
that.
Apologies.
Okay.
So
yeah.
if you could look in your binder, Gretchen provided an it should be the first pink sheet after the date, that one right there. This one where you're, yeah, right there. So yes, you did. Sorry.
January 30th.
January 30th. So I put as Trent mentioned, they provided an alternative budget in their presentation. So I wanted to put that in your binder so that you all could see the difference between what their ask is and what their alternative ask is. And then you can compare what they're willing to, if you can see, I think Observer, it's printing, and then we know Pulse is prioritizing printing over staff, but Observer wants to do staff over printing.
I would say just right off the bat, I am inclined to do the full alternative proposal. Just because I was considering if we were to cut the original proposal, it would be like my preference would be max 10 to 15,000. And from here it's in that. So it's their alternative proposal is about 14,000 lower
So
than
yeah,
their original proposal.
with both Observer and Pulse, if we did the full alternative amounts, we would be saving around 20,000 roughly. Alternative for the Observer is 52011.
I specifically remember saying that because they were willing to take less, I wanted to fund them fully, but I see the problem we're running into now.
Aaron, Pulse is 27398.
Hey, I had a question. So, sorry, I've gone really confused because we've been jumping all over the place.
We are currently yes, we're currently on the Observer.
So
and
this is yes, but the number that we're going for, that is assuming that we went through and did a
5%
base
cut.
percentage on everyone, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it. And then
From 4.
except for the ones that
Except the centers. And
Okay.
and what about career services? So that might be one we come back.
We will have further conversations. However, I will put it on everybody's mind for tomorrow. Career services is another area that I want to touch on in detail because that, as the killing guidelines has stated already, that seems like an area that seems foundational to the university, which I don't know if it should be coming from the S&A dollars. But Sorry, case management is one of the areas, not career services. Case management. Nope, yeah, that's it.
So are you saying that you would prefer that, for example, because right now we're looking at most things taking a 4% hit, slap little tweaks in here and there, which we'll figure out tomorrow.
Yes.
But this is one of the ones you would like to lower the percentage on.
That is one that we can discuss later, at a later, probably tomorrow.
Are we
But
sticking with the Observer and the Pulse right now, or are we tabling that as well?
Yeah. All right, for a reminder, student government has been reduced down to their previous FY26 time. Observer and Pulse have been reduced to their alternative funding that they have given us. We have done a 4% cut across the board, and we still have around $30,000 that we need to find, which is absolutely doable. 24,000. Awesome. With that in mind, I would say, Aaron, is it possible for you to send out this information to all of us after the meeting? Awesome. Yeah.
Were you guys gonna talk about publicity real quick or?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to put this out there. Think about it. We could take a 5-minute recess if you really want to contemplate. Do y'all just want to finish this
I would
and
say
not do it tomorrow? I'm just throwing that out there. I'll have it delivered on March 13th for our last meeting.
looking at this, I would say it is in the best interest of the committee to return tomorrow with a clearer head once we have a little bit more steam, just so we can look at the decisions that are being made here right now. However, I would say for the remaining 20 minutes, we can discuss and we'll go back down the line essentially, as we've done a lot of the heavy lifting with just general sweeps and areas that have been pointed out. I would say for the last 20 minutes, let's just go down the line. We can come back and we can redeliberate on some areas that we think are a bit more pressing, once we all get the link, and we can look at it in our own time in order to reevaluate where the priorities are.
I absolutely agree. I think it's fair. And like this is a big undertaking that we managed to do pretty efficiently. But it would probably be healthy for us to let it simmer and then come back and do the major tweaking tomorrow.
Yes. With that in mind, what was the next large area that we were going to be reviewing? We have just passed. It was bond.
Yeah, I was
Publicity.
looking at Publicity Center, February 13th.
Alrighty. Publicity Center will be our next topic of discussion.
Just to triple check. We decided on the Observer and the Pulse.
Yes, alternative funding. Fully funded.
I was gonna have to like fight some people.
No.
So
No.
I'm like, yay.
Yeah. No fighting. Not right now.
Yeah.
Which one? Oh.
I would also like to mention that you all asked the Publicity Center for additional information on the areas they charge, revenue, things like that. It is in your booklet.
Gotcha. There it is. I had to flip a bit. So I would like to mention Publicity Center for their FY27 does mention the wage increase for their student hours. I do believe we already approved the wage increase there.
This year, they need to take into account what the wages will be for next year.
Okay.
Now, we'll still continue because as we kind of talked about with the fee increase, we'll
This is the height, correct? The height.
They do print the height, but it's more than.
They do also other types of advertising and media for S&A and non-S&A areas.
So in total, they have around 35,000 in revenue from S&A and non-S&A areas that they've last year. Okay.
And for some reason, they seem to expect only 20,000 next year in revenue. I have more faith in them than that. Might this be one of the places that could handle a 5%?
Looking at their sources of revenue, I could say yes.
I agree.
Because even with the 20,000 that is expected, that they expect, that still wouldn't even hit their revenues uh, limit yet. So I would say this is an area that could handle the 5% cut. Do we believe campus activities is one of the areas that should be hit?
For me, looking on there, if it's already with the 4% is below of how much they got this year, looks like. So I wouldn't want to hit them too much more.
I like that idea of when we look at the ones that might be able to handle the 5%, seeing if with that change they're still getting at least a little bit more money. Yeah.
I think with 10 minutes left, I would say going down the list should be safe for tomorrow. Simply because there's a lot of tweaks that need to be made that I don't think we're going to really get too much time to discuss within the remaining 10 minutes.
Does it sound like we may not be doing the next 9 minutes or so?
I would say probably not. With the current trend of things that are going, I don't think the remaining 9 minutes are going to have too many. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you heard it at the last minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I would. Ready. All right, guys. Thank you very much for the time and the effort you put in today. You guys are doing an amazing job. We will look at this with fresh eyes and less squirrely brains tomorrow.
Longer, so I drank 2 energy drinks.
Ooh. Yeah. You got 9 minutes left. Do something with it. Alrighty. Well, tomorrow, as a reminder, we will be here for 4 hours instead of 5. 3? Ooh, 3 hours.
Needs to be out of here at 1.
10, 11, 12. Well, oh, yeah. Well, okay.
We got this.
Well, okay. Alrighty. With that, I will call this meeting to early adjourn at 1:52.